Hey, it's Keisha, and well, I am many things. We'll start with I'm a minister of metaphysical Christianity, but beyond that, I am a metaphysician of mass proportions. I don't normally do videos like this because I feel like the teachings that I offer are the explanation as to who I am and the introduction to that. But today's a little bit different, right? We're in what we call the basket, and there's plenty of astrology out there for you to read to know what that's about. But one of the things that is prescribed to do at this particular time is to get very clear about what it is you want to see in your life over the next 2 years and beyond. And I thought I would sit and take my own advice. Normally, being the master metaphysician that I am, I do not talk about the things that I'm working on until they are complete. But I wonder sometimes if that doesn't rob you of seeing the process behind the scenes, which is often tear-stained and messy. Because I think a lot of people come to metaphysics thinking that's going to be all rainbows and unicorns. You know, you're going to say what you want, and the universe is going to drop it in your lap. And that is certainly a possibility, and sometimes that happens. I have plenty of stories to recount where that's been the case. But more often than not, it is a transformation of the self and the soul that has to happen. And that is where the tears come from. So, in these last, and I'm coming up on the end of a 12-year dark night of the soul. It's been a long fucking slog, where I have finally learned to truly be grateful for all of it, not just in words, but in the heart. And it's taken me to some very dark places. And it's meant that the things and the people that I have relied on have been disappointments in one way or another. All of which to show me where the real truth of where my faith should lie. And I know for certain now that I've done that work. And it's interesting, you know, the way this comes about. Today is Friday, July 17th. On Sunday, this past Sunday, I was talking to somebody important to me. And I was saying that even though for years I've been saying, God, I'm ready. What else can there possibly be? I'm ready. Like, what are you preparing me for? If I'm not ready yet, because I thought when I started this journey that my character was already strong enough, but what else needed to be built within me to, you know, become whatever it is I'm supposed to become. And I was saying that, and I had realized, you know, over these last couple of weeks, that if the thing that I had been after had come to me a year ago or a month ago, I would not have been ready. And the reason I know that is because in these last couple of weeks, there has been this very fine polishing, this very fine refinement. And it's shown up in a couple of ways. And when I was talking to my friend on the phone, I could list them all off. And then I thought about it. I was like, you know what? I should record a video about that. And as I tried to recall what it was I had been going through, I couldn't really pinpoint. I couldn't come up with it again. Because in the moment, you know, ours is a very open, expansive, and, you know, God-filled conversation. And so in the bubble of that conversation, I was able to open to all these things. But, you know, as I think on it more, you know, the mind comes in and it just takes away from me. And I think maybe it was in my journal, and I've been telling myself to go look at my journal for the last couple of days, but my time hasn't gotten to that. And I'm not really too worried about that now as we sit down and talk about this. But one of the things has been this sense of absolute clarity and absolute peace. And what I mean by that is, you know, you can believe 98, even 99% that the thing that you're manifesting, or the thing that you need to have faith about, that you have, you know, adequate faith. But even that 1%, of questioning or just hedging your bets or holding back just a little bit is enough resistance to keep it from happening. And I have felt and seen myself over the course of the last week or two where all that has dropped away. despite the fact that these things in the physical reality that I am facing, it's a fucking mountain. But I am who I am. And I don't get to be this person without having been through all the things I've been through. And I can tell you that none of those things matter. I'm not bothered by any of that. I know that it's going to be resolved. And I'm not worried about it. And, any contingency plans that I may have been thinking about, they've gone away. I'm not thinking about that. I notice my interaction with time is different. One of the things that I really have wanted for the longest has been absolute control over my time. And I could see it happening when I had my old job, back in corporate world a couple of years ago, where I started to think about, this is the job that I do, but I'm choosing to give them my 8 hours a day. And it's that 8 hours is slotted into the rest of the things that I want to do. And so I was getting up earlier and doing the things that were for me, then doing this work portion to help pay those bills, and then taking the rest of my time to do me. And then obviously there was a point where I had to grow in consciousness. So the job went away, and it did. So what I've been noticing over the last few weeks is like, I have a schedule in my mind of the things that I need to get through and the order in which I want to do them. But how long it takes me, it's almost like I'm in a flow state, which could mean that I'm, doing it and don't notice the time, or that I notice the time. It's like, damn, where did it go? In a weird way. I've spent a lot of time, a lot of attention rather, in the last few months on regulating my nervous system. And I have done it through a mix of actual, nervous system, vagus nerve exercises. Some of them I've recorded for you. Journaling has helped to some degree. But really, my yoga, because I'm doing, I'm in October 16th will be 3 years of daily yoga. And I am currently roughly 2 weeks into a 30-day yoga challenge, where I'm doing 1 hour of yoga a day for 30 days. And we'll see what that looks like, when that's over. But, so I'm very much focused on my yoga. So I've been doing that every day for the last almost 3 years. Through tarot, I have now, as you may have noticed, I have a daily yoga video that I've committed to. And I've been doing it since December 26th, I believe. And I think it was December 29th that I decided to do it in Russian. So I've been putting up videos every day in English and in Russian for over 6 months now. And I have loved watching my growth and my process as I've been doing it. And one of the things I'll just share with you, because it's just kind of cool to me. One of the first things I noticed that got me really excited was that I typically record the videos in English first. That's to get my thoughts around the tarot of it all. And then the process of slotting it into Russian, and then I'll record the Russian. There are some days where the Russian, like I've turned the camera on and the Russian comes out first, and I'm always like, whoa, that happened. I wasn't expecting that. But I've noticed that more often, the length of the video in English, or the length of the video in Russian, is the same as it is in English. And I'm not exactly sure what that means, other than I'm consistent. And it's not just a matter of translating, these words into this language. Because something I noticed actually this morning was that there's so many more syllables in Russian, and there's a lot more to get out. So in theory, it would just take longer to record in Russian anyway, because there's so much more involved. Like the words just longer, they're just more syllables. It's just, it's a little bit heavier. It's not clunky by any means. Russian is beautiful. That's why I love it. It's very musical. But when I noticed that happening, that the times were, within 1 or 2 seconds or 10 seconds of each other, sometimes right on the money, that always made me feel good. And I'm noticing that more and more and more, and that's cool. Something else that I noticed today is that there are times when I'll record in English And there are a couple of words that I just need in Russian to like figure it out. And so I'll look them up, and my recall in like, so not all the words that I have to look up are words that I knew before. Because like when I say before, like I used to be super fluent. Like I used to work in Russian, lived in it, and like it didn't speak English at all. Didn't even think in English. I mean, really for the most part for a few years. So I have a huge vocabulary that I'm now drawing on. But what's different now is learning tarot and the Bible and all these other things. That's not a vocabulary that I necessarily had in the past, because those weren't things that I was talking about. So I'm having to look these things up, and I don't have to write them down. Like I'll look it up and then like, okay, got that word. Yeah. And then I'll just keep going. And it's like it's slotting in much faster. And that's just something that's cool. Another thing that I'm really enjoying, and this is all part of a goal. I don't know if I've ever said this to anybody. First, let me back up and tell you my mission. The reason I do these things is because I want to heal, educate, inspire, and elevate the hearts and minds of people everywhere. And for a long time, that was just in English. But I'm like, wait a minute, I have this whole other me that is in Russian. And so it needs to happen in Russian too. And at some point, this was like maybe it's been 3 years now, I had this idea that I want to be able to speak, like, hold court in Russian on any range of topic and speak for at least 30 minutes fluidly, the same way I would if we were having an interview or conversation in English. And that's a big ask, because it's not just me talking, for 30 minutes, these things that are coming out of my mind. That's easy enough. And in fact, I've done a video about that, or I've done a video like that in Russian. It was 26 minutes. But to be able to take questions from an audience, things that I can't anticipate necessarily what the question is going to be, to know what the response will need to be. To be able to do that is, I think, a little bit different. It's going to stretch me in different ways. And, if you talk to me and we have a conversation, we can talk about a lot of things because I have a lot of interests. But to translate that all of that into Russian and to draw all of that in Russian it's a challenge, and I'm loving learning this stuff. But that's the goal and where I'm going. And this daily tarot practice is bringing that to me, one, in terms of the tarot, but also in terms of the Bible, because I'm the favorite scriptures that I would draw on in English, I'm also now looking up and writing and thinking about in Russian. And you may have seen I've done a few videos in the past in this, but that's usually I've had kind of an editor or a friend, behind me, where I've written out, what I want to talk about, and then I translate it, and then I have them review it and clean it up. This is more extemporaneous, right? And I want to be as perfect in Russian as I am in English. Basically, that's what I'm after, right? And today started I took a new step in that regard. My 30-day yoga challenge, I'm now doing my yoga in Russian. And it surprised me that I know a lot of the body and can talk about a lot of this stuff already. But there is a difference between saying it and hearing it in your mind and saying it out loud, right? That's why, I don't know if I posted this at some point, but the very first video that I tried to film, I turned the camera on, because I'd say these things in my head all the time because I always have a conversation going in my head. But I turned the camera on thinking that I could just start speaking. And when the camera turned on, it was like, I froze and I just burst out laughing because it's just different. So what I'm looking forward to is, of course, I'll be finishing out the rest of my challenge with classes in Russian. And then in time, I will start to practice. And then in time, I will start to, teach my classes myself in Russian, and we'll go from there. But yeah, that's just kind of where that is. Something else that was really important that I wanted to talk about was, so going back to, I don't usually talk about my manifestations until they're complete. It is really important to me, and the thing that I want above anything, is to have absolute freedom of choice, movement, and expression. that phrase has been in my journals for I can't even tell you how many years. And I feel like I'm right on the verge of that becoming my life and reality. So for me to put this on tape, and I'm going to publish this later today, is huge. Absolute freedom of choice, movement, and expression. And what that's looked like over these many years has changed. And one of the things that I've had to deal with many times, especially in these last 12 years, is, this dark night of the soul, has been that the things that I wanted in the way that I wanted to pursue them were not given to me. Not given in the sense like I asked for it to be given, but the way that I wanted to move in the world, the way that I wanted to express, were not options, given the conditions that I was under. And so I've had to pivot, and also had to release a lot. And one of those things that I've had to release is the prescription of how I wanted it to be and what I thought it should look like. To the point that now I'm in a space where what's important is, as long as it meets the condition of me having freedom of choice, movement, and expression, and it feels good and it fills the soul, then that's what it's supposed to be. And what exactly that's going to look like, I realize now I'm not in a position to prescribe, but I fully accept the plans that God has for me. Now, there are some endeavors, because I want to be a success. I want to be wildly successful in all of my endeavors. So these are the things that are important to me. And something that I realized was important about me sharing is that nothing good happens but through people. I keep these things inside while I'm working on them because I don't want the negativity of the outside world, of people thinking, oh, you can't do this, or, oh, that's just a temporary, I don't need anybody else's input, right? Especially when it's negative. But if nothing good happens but through people, it makes sense that I'm going to need to invite people in to be aware of it so that I can make good of it. So these are some of the endeavors that I'm working on. And if you're seeing this and have some insight or, want to be a part, reach out, because nothing good happens but through people. And I'm hoping that you all see that we are all good people and we make that connection. My firesider, the plated altar. I created a fireside. I've been brewing fire cider for 15 years now. And I've been selling it the last few years. And I got into a point where I decided on packaging, and I need to print labels. That's where I am in the process. So I'm if I can get labels, right? And then I'll feel okay, I can start to show this to different stores. I've got a marketing plan and ideas about that. And I have 3 flavors. I have my original. I have spiced hibiscus and pineapple burdock root. And they're quite good and they work. And as a minister of healing, that is my service to my community. So it's not enough that I just make it and it sits and I sell it to a couple people. I do want to see it in stores. I do want to see it have a bigger audience, because I think it's valuable. It's useful. It's helpful. It's the good work for the good people. So that's one of the things. I'm writing several books, and before seminary, before social media, and I lost the ability to read, I used to read 5-6 books a night. And my process was, I would have a question in my mind and I would go pull the books off my shelf that dealt with that topic, and I would sit and read through all of them. And I did this every night for years, right? And then I started seminary and had to focus on that. And then that led in, by the time that finished, social media had taken on more, and I was I lost my attention span, blah, blah, blah. I lost the ability to read, but I've gotten it back recently through one of the other things that has kept me regulated, and that's been heated rivalry. I watched the show in February because someone said, "Oh, Keisha, you with your Russian, you're gonna love. I can't wait till you see episode 5. You're gonna love the monologue." And I'm like, "What are you talking about? What's this? I don't know what you're talking about." So yeah, I watched it in February, and life has not been the same. In that, I'm now reading a lot of. Well, I've read all the books, obviously, and I'm reading fanfic. Because I love these characters so much, I just want to spend more and more time with them. But it means I'm reading, 100 pages a day, roughly. Anywhere from 50 to 100 pages, depending on how much time I have. And don't be fooled that because it's on a screen that doesn't count. Those are words written on a page. It all fucking counts. Reading is reading, books are books. It doesn't matter if it's part of the capitalist system that prints it and sells it through a store. These authors, and there's some really good ones, they are putting their all into it. And it is some good writing, and I am enjoying this process, like enjoying it. And it's reminding me that I too am a writer, not of fiction, but I have these books inside of me. And so I've started working on them. And like I used to read 4 and 5 at a time, I'm writing them kind of all at the same time. One that you are actually seeing in real time me develop. Well, it's already written, but you're seeing, I'm releasing it to you kind of in real time. That is turning the key. It's a revisiting of Emmett Fox's classic, The Golden Key, where the idea being, if you focus on God and not the problem, then you will have the resolution to your problem, right? Or you will rise above it such that you can receive the resolution. So I wrote this book in full. Well, it's been about a year now. Wrote it in my journal one day during a day at work while I was substitute teaching, but my classes were quiet, so I had the time, and the mental capacity just all came out. And then I got the, intuitive hit to send this off to my preferred publisher, which, look, I applied to Middlebury, this one for college, early decision, and it was the only school I applied to, and I got in. There's only one publisher that I want, and I want to be published by, and that's Divorce. And it's because they published Catherine Ponder and Barrett Spalding. Two of the, whoa. I didn't expect that. Those two people and the work that they created has been with me pretty much on a daily basis for the last, 15 years since I was first introduced to them. And while it's important that the work that I write get out there, it just means something to me that I would be published alongside the two authors who are the most important to me. So I sent off a proposal to Divorce, and I have not heard back. So I will let that percolate, and I will let that be what it's going to be until such time I get the guidance or the opportunity for it to be published elsewhere if it's not going to be with them. And I'll be okay with that, but I know what I want, and I've been after that. So every so often, every few days, or whatever batch I post, I will take one of the scriptures or the ageless wisdom statements that I've written, and I'll post it to my Instagram account. But what's interesting is that the original book was just the scriptures or the ageless wisdom, or basic metaphysical principles. As I am publishing it on Instagram one by one, I'm also adding a bit of exposition. So by the time I've worked through the 116 statements, I will actually have 2 books. I will have the original with just the statements, and I will have the second with the exposition. Look at me being so efficient. 2 for 1. I love it. So that is coming along, and that is out there, and I'm working the magic on that. Another, and this is the really big one that I've been working on for years here and there in fits and spurts. And that is I call it my DEM. It's my depression episode manual. And I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but I had a really rough one weekend a couple of years ago, and where I sat and rotted all weekend. And that rotting itself wasn't necessarily bad, but I'd never really done it like that before, and I had never been in that headspace, and it was just a really hard weekend. But Monday comes, the sun rises, and I have to go and clock in at this job. So I go to my bookshelf, and on my bookshelf, all of my books are in order. And I know each of the titles, and I know exactly where everything is. And before I could get myself ready to go to work, I was like, I need to read this. And I walked to the bookshelf, and and I knew exactly where it should be and what it looked like. It was a spiral bound book. And I went to put my hand on it to pull it down. It wasn't there. And I was like, what? And I'm like, but where is it? And I kept looking, and I'm like, no, it should be right here. This is the section it belongs in. Where is it? And then lightning, it's like, oh, wait a minute. I've seen it because I've seen it. It's not there because I haven't written it yet. And Spirit said, it's not there because it's for you to write. And I was like, oh, okay. So I have been writing it, and like I said, in fits and spurts. And I really, for the last 2-3 months, I've been like, okay, I'm going to work on it this weekend. I'm going to work on it today. I'm going to do, I'm doing 3 pages this week. I'm doing 3 pages, and something will happen, and it doesn't happen. And then I beat myself up. And then I realized, especially, and I'll come back to it, but I realized last weekend that there are things I need to live. Even though I have very good ideas, and for the most part, I think I've touched on and lived at some point in my experience all of these things. Again, this refinement is happening. And when I'm asking Holy Spirit to give me the words, if I'm not regulated enough and haven't processed enough of my experiences, then I am not in order and clear enough to receive Holy Spirit speaking through me. And so I've stopped beating myself up because I realized that I am living the process and I'm actually doing the work. What happened last weekend, and that's part of how I was able to come to you today, was that, and I've been doing yoga for 25-ish years. I talk all the time about hip openers and how they can, your hips being the repository of so much trauma. And, you do hip openers in yoga and you can start crying on the mat. And I had heard this lore and these tales forever. And it had never been my experience, despite the fact that I am always doing pigeon pose. I am always in them hips. Last week, I was already cooking before I got on the mat. But it was manageable. And it was manageable in that some of the techniques that I talk about in my DEM, I actually was doing. I was nearing the verge of a panic attack. Brought on by what? I don't really understand, but it was there nonetheless. And I'm like, you need an ice pack. Go grab the ice pack. And I put the ice pack on my face and I put it on my neck, and then everything calmed down. And I'm like, see, this is why I need to, this is what I need to start with when I start, writing in my DEM. I should start writing about this. And then, I needed something else, and, blah, blah, blah. And then I was finally, it all calmed down, and I got to a point where I could actually get on the mat. So I get on the mat, and hips are open and things are good. I popped my right hamstring. And while the unspooling of my legs was nice, I still popped my hamstring. That's still damage. Something happened and I just started bawling, right? Then I get myself together and I'm good. Get back on it, and I'm working on the left side. Now I'm very much paying attention because I don't want to go over the edge, right? The left hamstring popped. Again, the unspooling is nice, but what's going on? And I'm getting all this information, and all of it I'm writing down. And it's all to go in my DIM. And I was like, hey, I am working on it. I'm living it. And I'm taking my notes. So it doesn't matter if I'm actually sitting with that file open on my computer, with my computer open doing it. I'm doing it as I'm living it.